Well, there's several points here, Graham. First, about the state and psychedelics being illegal at the moment. I have a rather ambiguous attitude to that, because I actually quite like the fact they're illegal. And first of all, the law is not very often enforced. I don't know anyone who's been arrested for taking LSD or ayahuasca.
Well, we should make the distinction. It doesn't really matter whether it's psychedelic or whether it's heroin, actually. Adults should be sovereign over their own bodies and consciousness while doing no harm to others, in my view. And there's something really wrong with society if that's not the case.
No, my reason for thinking, the sort of slightly perverse reason for actually not being as worried about it as you, is that as soon as these things are legalized, as we've seen with cannabis in Canada, huge corporations, Silicon Valley billionaires, pour billions into this. So Peter Thiel, who is not everyone's favorite billionaire, is getting into the psychedelic business, huge investments trying to patent psilocybin or at least methods of preparing it. And vast corporations, the government might try to control our consciousness, but what if vast corporations control psychedelics and then advertise them on TV? That's an alternative scenario, unfortunately, in the present world.
It's a fair scenario, and you're right. There is a huge commercialization in the cannabis industry and in the psychedelics industry, and hedge funds are getting into this, and it's becoming a big investment opportunity all around. I still like to believe that the plant medicines would subvert that. That our society does seek to restrict explorations in altered states of consciousness because those explorations are subversive. They pull the rug out from underneath the entire structure of the way our society works, and I think they continue to do that, whether legal or not, actually.
Yes, well, I think that the legal thing isn't, right now, at least in Yorkshire, where I was recently, the meadows are full of psilocybin mushrooms, liberty caps, growing in abundance all over our green and pleasant land. And so, the ability of the state to suppress these things is somewhat limited.
All it can do is generate fear and
yes.
A sense of oppression. Yeah.
Anyway,
can I just come in here, Rupert and Graham? Just come in here because there's an interesting point in the chat related to this theme, which is this is Jeremy Young, all dominant groups / governments seek to control consciousness and alternative ways of viewing reality. Look at the materialist education system, which is designed to induct children into materialist orthodoxy. What do you think of that point?
I think it's an absolutely correct point. We are from childhood schooled to think and function in particular ways. And increasingly we are. I accept that the mainstream religions have a different view, but increasingly in society we are. The forces of communication work to say that there is no spirit, there is no soul, there is no meaning, there is no purpose to life. We are just material objects. This materialist agenda seems to infuse the society we live in every way. And I think ultimately it may be the downfall of our society. We do need to open up to these other realms and other experiences. And I do think that people who've had psychedelic experiences tend to become more questioning of the established framework of quote unquote reality than if we'd not had those experiences.
Yeah, well, I also agree. The system we have at the moment is designed to inculcate a kind of materialist worldview. It's highly secular, it's anti-spiritual, anti-religious. On the other hand, we do have in Britain, as in every country, traditional religions as well. And I myself am a practicing Christian. I'm an Anglican. I go to church, and there, and it is still the established church. So there's a peculiar ambiguity about our state, because part of it that deals with the monarchy and the established church is dealing with ancient archetypes, not just modern materialist worldviews. And for anyone who's a practitioner of Christianity or any other traditional religion, there's no doubt about the existence of entities, you know, angels, saints, the souls of the departed. These are all just part of it. I mean, just a few days ago, on Tuesday, was All Souls Day, and all over Britain, all over Europe, all over the world, on the Day of the Dead, there were requiems for the departed. I went to one at Westminster Abbey. It was absolutely beautiful, with marvelous music and lighting candles. I was lighting candles for people I know who died. And this is huge in Mexico. So the idea of the departed, a relationship with the departed, a continued existence of the departed, realms of angels and saints who exist in some other realm, all these things are not just flaky New Age views, etc. They're part of the mainstream of all religious traditions, and shamanic traditions too strongly acknowledge the existence of other entities like animal spirits, the ancestors, and so on. We do have here in Britain, I mean, in every parish, we have churches with statues of saints and people praying, and celebration of St. Michael and all angels on September the 29th, and so on. It's a minority current in British life now, but it's still there. And it reminds us that our ancestors, and still many people today, have not bought into the materialist worldview as the only way of looking at things.
Let's then take this a little further, and your position, as I understand it, and my position, I think, is the same in this respect, is that our consciousness is not our brains. In somehow, the brain is certainly connected to consciousness, but it is not the essence of our consciousness. And when you speak of telepathy and the mind extending beyond the brain, and you can support that with experimental evidence, it then raises the question: what happens to us when we die? What is death? And actually, what is life? What are we doing here? Is there any purpose to it? Is there any function to this level of existence? And when physical death comes, does it just all go out like a light, or does our consciousness continue on a journey? Have you given thoughts to these questions, and what do you feel about it?
Well, I have given thought to it, yes. Well, my own view is in a sense quite simple. I think that when we die, we go on dreaming, but we can't wake up anymore because we haven't got a physical body to wake up in. So in a sense, we've spent our whole lives preparing for this through our dreams. And we know from our dreams that, you know, what we dream about depends on our fears, our expectations, our experiences, our memories, our hopes, our desires, that our dreams are very much influenced by us and what we believe, what we think, what we experience. But they're also influenced by factors beyond ourselves, because most of us have dreams that are surprising, that we couldn't actually have made up if we just wanted to make them up. Such surprising things can happen in dreams. So I think that our dreams are the way in which the natural biological basis for this other kind of consciousness that we're preparing all our lives through having dreams for just being confined to the dream state after we die. And it's interesting to me that Tibetans practice lucid dreaming. Tibetan lamas, and one of the practices they have in Tibetan Buddhism is the practice that they cultivate lucid dreaming. Well, there are many people in our own society who do too, they cultivate this awareness of dreaming while they're dreaming. So a lucid dream, as you know, is when you become aware within a dream that you're dreaming. And that gives people a much greater control over their dreams. And the reason that Tibetans practice lucid dreaming is that when they die, they think they go into a bardo, a kind of intermediate realm, and the ability to know what's going on in the dream realm and to know how to deal with it, which they've practiced through lucid dreams, serves them well in the otherwise confusing circumstances of being trapped in the dream world when they die.
Fascinating. I think exactly what the ancient Egyptians were doing with their exploration of death and their focus on that. It wasn't morbid, it was preparation for want of a better word, a journey that comes after death. And that afterlife realm in ancient Egypt is very similar to the Bardo of the Tibetans, actually.
Well, I think, you see, I think that the Christian concept of purgatory is very similar too. I mean, the Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory as an intermediate realm, that when you die, you go into a realm of continued development, which is somewhat dreamlike, where you work through various issues that are unresolved in this life. That makes complete sense to me, and I think it's very similar to the Egyptian and the Tibetan views.
It is.
And the other thing about purgatory is that there's a continued interrelation between the dead and the living, that the traditional Roman Catholic and to some degree Anglican practice of praying for the dead is that you can help them through your prayers, and they can also help you through their prayers. So there's this interrelation with the ancestors, and this is taken for granted in most cultures. In traditional Chinese households, there's an ancestor shrine, as there is in Japanese households, where people recognize and acknowledge their ancestors. In African societies, it's absolutely taken for granted that ancestors are part of the society. Even though they're invisible, they're very much interacting with it. And I think that was a very common sense all over Europe. The Protestant Reformation attempted to stop that, break that link with the ancestors, and confine the ancestors to a kind of state of immobility and sleep until the Last Judgment, when they woke up judged. They tried to get rid of purgatory in their view, but it's sort of come back within the Anglican Church to some degree, and it's still there in the Roman Catholic Church. So I think this is part of our own cultural heritage as well.
Yeah, it's
Rupert, sorry to interrupt, Rupert, can I ask you, your continuation in the dream state, do you regard this as solipsistic, or can one interact? You in your own space, or can your other spaces interact so that you're in a community dream, a shared dream after death?
Well, I think it's more or less as Graham was saying about these ayahuasca journeys. It's I think we get an intensified experience of the dream realm through psychedelics. I don't think it's a totally different realm. I think it's the same kind of thing as dreams, but we're more aware of it. It's much more intense as an experience, and we're more conscious of it. And I think that in the dream realm, it's not just solipsistic. I think even in ordinary dreams, the fact people can have shared dreams, the fact people can have precognitive dreams about things that haven't yet happened, the fact people have telepathic dreams, and the fact that dreams can involve shared archetypal forms like Ganesh in the dreams of Hindus, I think suggests to me that our dream realms overlap with each other, and possibly with those of animals as well. You know, dogs dream, and maybe we overlap with the dreams of our pets. So I think that this, the post-mortal dream state that I'm suggesting we might be in would include not only other people, including our ancestors and friends and those who've gone before us, who've died before us, but also the traditional Christian view is that this would also include saints, who are the blessed dead, people who've been particularly saintly during this life, who after death are able to help others in the dream state. In the Christian belief, then Christ himself, through having gone through death, is a major figure in that post-mortal realm who can help and guide us in our onward journey. And that's one of the points of what Christians call faith in Christ, is that after death, he'll help us and work with us. And of course, in the Roman Catholic and some Anglican practice of the Hail Mary, the prayer to Mary, Mary is not only the mother, but she's also, as it were, the midwife of the dying process, because the womb is the tomb. Death